So we're in Exodus chapter 19, and would someone read for us chapter 19, verse 1? We're looking at the time information in that verse.
In the third month, when the children of Israel had gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai.
Okay,
That's fine.
so how long between the Exodus and they reach Sinai?
A month?
About a month.
Oh,
It's about 3 months. It's a little bit shorter than that because the Passover takes place a couple weeks into the first month. Okay? So it's really more about 2.5 months. And I took a measure of the distance from the city of Pithom up in Egypt down to Mount Sinai, the traditional Sinai location. And it measures about 300 kilometers. 300 kilometers. Okay?
How far is that in English?
How far is that in English? We need a translator. A kilometer is about half a mile. So that would be about 150 miles.
Thanks.
So let me write that down. 150 miles of traveling, and they do it in 2.5 months, which would be what, about that would be, let's see, 2 months would be 60 days, plus another 15 days would be 75 days.
2 miles a day.
75 days. We're using round figures here, and that comes to about 2 miles a day. What do you think? Does that sound like a reasonable mode of travel? Does it sound like an exceptional mode of travel?
When you're walking in sandals, I'd say it's not bad.
Sandals and
Sandals and heat.
Weren't they
About
talking
age.
walking on sand?
People are older.
People who are older, okay, and then not just people who are older, but also children, right?
Right.
Children are traveling in this.
They have their cattle.
They had their cattle to bring, so there's cows and sheep and goats, and maybe they had other things. I don't know if they had other types of animals that they would be bringing. Mike,
I walk about 2 miles when I mow the yard.
when you mow the yard, okay, yeah. I know when you play a soccer game, you run about 5 miles.
Yeah.
So that's gives us some sense of a measure here. It's not an unreasonable pace, I think, about 2 miles a day. About 2 miles a day, if they were doing it at 1 day at a time. You know, they may have traveled for a few days and rested for a day or two, and then broke camp and traveled again. Because if you break, how many campers here? Anybody go camping? A number of you go camping. If you do tent camping, and you've got to put your tent up every morning, and or take it down every morning, and put it up every evening, that takes time, doesn't it? All of that stuff takes time. Yeah, Mike.
I would imagine it's probably difficult to find water at certain places, so when they do, they probably want to hang around for a while.
Okay, so they may have traveled a couple days and then camped by an oasis and had some water and a chance to bathe and to maybe do cooking and things like that, and then moved on again. So how long does it take to walk a mile?
15, 20 minutes, depends on your speed.
Depends on your pace.
24, I go 2.5 miles an hour is 24 minutes.
24 minutes.
It's on the treadmill.
24,
That's 2.5 miles an hour.
2.5 miles an hour. We'll use Jim's measure. About 24 minutes to walk a mile. They would have had to take their time, wouldn't they? They would have had to stay together. You couldn't rush off. The older ones and the younger ones would have set the pace as they went. When my kids were younger, and we would go hiking in the woods, often I would start out, but I would go too fast. I would be the lead. I would go too fast, and so I would put the slowest kid at the front of the pack and let them lead. And that would help set the pace for the rest of us as we were going. And that worked right up until we were getting close to the end. And then usually that kid, when they saw the end was near, they took off. Suddenly there was a burst of energy. And they fled. We're almost done. So it gives you a picture. The young children and the older members of the community would have been setting this pace. I think I saw Jim's hand up over here.
I'm glad he didn't have a bad name.
You're glad he didn't have a bad knee?
Yeah, I bet I have a bad name.
Oh, yeah, you wonder if some of them may have been struggling with different maladies and things like that would also have affected. It's possible that they could have had things like carts to help move people around.
Animals.
Say again?
Animals?
There are donkeys are things that a person who has trouble walking could have ridden on. So that's another option. So there would have been ways to get this done. But when you do the math, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It's not too intense a pace of travel. It's fairly reasonable, given the type of crowd that they're in. How fast can you go if you're not held back by people who are struggling to walk, or by little children or things like that? How fast? What kind of pace can you make on a march?
I used to walk 3 miles in an hour, so that'd be 20 minutes. No, 3 miles is what I would walk when I got out of the hospital and we built up after triple bypass. I was walking 3 miles a day.
Okay.
And I'd do that in an hour.
You do that in an hour. Okay.
And that was about, I figured on the treadmill, if I was walking 3 miles an hour, it was about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So of course, the faster you're walking, the less time it would be.
Sure.
But 3 miles an hour, you're moving pretty fast.
I've been reading Ohio's frontier history of late here. And I came across the story about, I want to say it's Fort Lucas or something like that, up in the northern part of Ohio. And it was kind of a bad fort. And the militia that were there were not happy, and they wanted to get out of there because they were having trouble with the Indians. And they had to get over to Fort Pitt, which is Pittsburgh. That's Pittsburgh. And I think it's about a 100-mile trip. And the guys did it in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
2 days. They were scared, I think. They were beating the brush to get back to Fort Pitt.
That's for sure.
That definitely sounds like military.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Joe's always wearing that army hat. I always want to know how far that army can go.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought further what Navy guys did. Further what you Navy guys did.
They've been there ahead of you.
Oh, dear. Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's move on. We've got a sense now of what Israel was doing on its march, what it was like for them. And let's see now where they all go with this. Someone read for us verses 2 through 6. And there's a colorful expression here to describe the trip. Verses 2 through 6.
I didn't sleep last night. No.
They set out from Rephidim, and came into the wilderness of Sinai. And they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain, while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel.
Okay, thank you, Mike. What's the colorful expression here that describes the trip?
Or you on eagle's wings.
Or you on eagle's wings. What do you suppose the Lord means when he says it that way?
He'll lift you up,
He's going to lift us up? Okay?
keep you going.
Yeah. How do eagles fly?
Pretty fast.
They glide.
Okay, they soar,
They
don't
soar,
they?
yeah.
They soar. Yeah. You bore them on eagle's wings. Sounds, the way God says it sounds like it's a fast and easy trip, doesn't it? Sounds like a fast and easy trip. They might not have always felt that way. But for a huge community of people, this is incredible progress, isn't it? He's moving an entire nation of people, and they've really made some great progress on the way. Let's see. Now God's going to set some goals for them. In verses 5 and 6, what goals do you see God setting for the people? And I'll write those up on the board. So you can look at it. Say again?
Obey his voice.
Obey.
Keep you confident.
Obey the voice. Okay, what else?
Keep his promise.
Keep promises. What else do you see in there? What's God wanting from his people?
They have to keep the covenant.
Okay, to keep the promise or the covenant. We'll talk about that in a minute, what a covenant is. What's he going to turn them into?
Treasured possessions.
Treasured possession. Going to become a treasured possession. How else does he describe his people here? What are they going to become?
Kingdom of priests.
Kingdom of priests.
And a holy nation.
Kingdom of priests and a holy, nation. So there's the goals. What was Israel before? What were they in the land of Egypt?
Slave.
They were slaves. They were slaves. So they might know something about this, right? They might know something about listening and obeying, but they're not really prepared for some of this other stuff, are they? They may not see themselves at this point as a treasured possession. They treasure their own lives, but to be treasured by God is quite something different, isn't it?
That's an honor.
It would be an honor, wouldn't it? It'd be a high honor to be treasured by God. How about a kingdom of priests? Do they have any priests at this point?
Yeah.
Say again?
I don't think so.
That's right. We haven't gotten yet to the book of Leviticus, where the priests are ordained into their ministry. So who is serving as the priesthood to them at this point? Moses and Aaron. Moses and his brother Aaron. So just two people, basically. Just two people are consecrated this way. We'll see that there's a more thorough consecration coming up for Aaron. We should maybe use the word, instead of consecration, we use the word called. They've been called by God into this holy type of leadership. Is Israel a holy nation at this point?
sure.
Not at all. Okay, not at all. They're kind of a mess at this point, as we're going to see as things go on. God's got huge goals, doesn't he? God has huge goals. And what he's going to be doing in the promise and the covenant is all about bringing Israel to this point. That they're going to become this kind of a people to their God. It all starts here though, doesn't it? Listen to God. Listen to God. Because they're never going to reach this without that. That trusting and obeying of God. True also in our lives, isn't it? True also in our lives. If we would be the treasured people of God, it starts with listening to His voice and following in His ways. All right. Any comments or questions on where we're at so far?
Wouldn't they feel a little bit treasured because they're out of Egypt? I mean, I would think they would feel at least real good about things.
They've been chosen.
Maybe not treasured, but feel, I mean, it's like when you finish something, you feel good because you finished it, and they finished getting out of Egypt, so I feel maybe they felt like that, even though they turned on Moses later.
Yeah, they've been chosen by God. He has set them apart from all the other nations. In this way, He's starting to form them into His own people, the way that they're going to live and serve Him. Yeah, and I imagine you would be excited about this big change. Well, it's a life-changing thing, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
They're not always excited about the outcome of this trip.
Yeah.
We've seen that already as they complain as they go.
Well, they didn't look at the big picture.
Yes. And as human beings, we like things to be easy, don't we? We like things to be easy. We like things to be simple. We like things to be clear. And life isn't always like that, is it?
No.
God lays out a pathway and a challenge before us. And to have real accomplishment in our lives and as His people, it's going to be challenging, isn't it? It's going to be challenging. So let's see where God is taking them next. Someone read for us verses 7 through 9.
And Moses came and called the elders of the people, laid before their faces all the words which the Lord commanded them. And all the people answered together and said, all the Lord hath spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the word of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear that I spoke with thee and before thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord.
Okay. So, God is laying out His plans here before the people. Moses presents the plans to them. And how do the people respond?
They said they'll do it.
They'll do it. They won't just do it, they're going to do all of it, aren't they? We're ready, Lord. We're ready. We're going to do everything that you have said. They're ready to serve and follow God. That's good, isn't it? That's good. Challenges, though, are going to change all of this, aren't they? And the attitude. Have you ever been in a business when they're putting a restructuring in? They're going to take things in a new direction. We've got these new goals, new plans, and they're laying it out in front of you. And they have the big corporate meeting where everybody comes together, right? Here it is. Here's the plan. Hooray! Right?
And then they lay you off.
That's what the meeting's about.
You're not on the organizational code.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an exciting moment when they pull you together like that to tell those of us who don't matter as much about the corporate strategy, right, where it's going to go. But then the other shoe does fall, doesn't it? And somehow that's all got to be implemented. You've got to make it happen. You've got to have teamwork to make it fold together. Ever get in a meeting like that and have some people going, yeah, right. Maybe you've been one of those people, right? Maybe you've been one of those yeah, right people. Yeah, Jim.
Anytime you have a meeting like that, people still wonder why.
Why is it being done?
The general motors, yeah.
Yeah.
They're trying to make some type of a change.
Mm.
But you weren't always,
High that up, high that up.
you know, I mean, you didn't know what to expect.
Yes.
You think you?
Yes, and much of Israel would have been in that boat, wouldn't it? Yeah, the elders maybe who were gathering together with Moses and Aaron and hearing from him, they would have had more understanding of what was going on, but the common average Israelite, they were getting probably much smaller understanding of what God was up to and what was happening. It's going to take a while to form a united people, isn't it? Yeah, and you know the story. How long does it take?
40.
40 years. It takes 40 years. Go
There's a
ahead.
commentary that says, were they not so complaining, it wouldn't have taken that long.
Okay,
You know, I mean, how long does it take to get from one end to the other?
okay,
We had the map up there.
yeah.
Really, would it have taken 40 years if you stopped complaining? You probably wouldn't have had that.
The distance is a little bit farther from Sinai up to the Jordan River where they cross eventually. It's a little bit farther. But if they could do that in 2.5 months from Egypt to Sinai, they could have probably made it up to Jordan in about 3.5 months.
Yeah. So the commentary is, if you would stop complaining, you would have been here in half the time.
It could have gone much smoother. It could have gone much smoother. Yeah.
And another thing is, when you explained to the elders, supposedly understood it, and then people started asking them questions, and the elders had their own interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he says this, but I think maybe we'll do that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that made it longer too.
Yes. Yeah. So everybody's going to see it with a little bit different eyes, which is, for human beings, that's normal, isn't it? That's normal. That's how it is. You got the father at the wheel, you got the mother riding shotgun, you got the kids in the back, and the kids are saying, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" They can't grasp the vision, can they, of what this is going to take.
3 more Barneys.
Say again?
3 more Barneys.
3 more Barneys? You'll have to remind me of what that means, Susan. I don't know what it means.
The Barney television show, you have to watch 3 shows of Barney.
Half hour.
Okay. Oh, okay. 3 more times for Barney. Yeah.
I can't believe you weren't a Barney man.
Do you want me to sing the song?
No.
We heard that song. We heard that song. I'll never forget. I'll never forget this experience. So Susan and I this is before children. We were on vacation in New Orleans, and we went to the French Quarter. And there was an old fella who I think may have had too much to drink, sitting off to the side with a cup in front of him, looking for some more beer money. And he was singing, "I love you, you love me." He was singing the Barney song, hoping that someone would, "Won't you say you love me too," and put something in his cup. So I'm sure you had characters like this in Israel, okay? That whole complex of humanity together. And at first they say, "We're all in, we're going to do this." But you know the challenges are coming, don't you? You know they're coming.
Yeah, the song stuck.
The song's stuck. Moses should have had him sing. All right, let's move on, verses 10 to 15. Someone read through that, verses 10 through 15 for us. Let's see what happens next here.
The Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, 'Take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot, whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpets sound a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain.' So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments." Go on.
Verse 15.
And he said to the people, "Be ready for the third day. Do not go near a woman."
Okay. So, there's three things that are done here to consecrate the people. Three things that are done to consecrate the people and the setting that they're in. What are the three things?
Wash their garments.
They're going to wash their garments. I lost my pen. There it is. So washing. What else?
Set limits.
Okay, they're setting limits around the mountain, right? You can't go up and touch the mountain. There's a boundary that's being set. And there's one more.
Don't go near a woman.
Don't go near a woman. Amen.
I'm leaving
As he
now.
sits next
I'm
to her.
leaving, yes.
Yeah.
More than one ways.
No women. So we see that God is starting this process of making them into a holy nation, isn't he? He's starting this process. And it's fairly simple at this point. Get your clothes washed, okay? You can imagine what these clothes must have looked like and smelled like after they had marched 2.5 months through the desert. It would have probably been a mess. Yeah, the ladies are laughing out there thinking about that laundry, what that would have been like. God says, take some time, wash up, get yourself ready. And then he sets the boundaries. What happens if they go to the mountain?
Shot or killed.
They're gonna die. Okay, that's a bold boundary, isn't it? That's about as firm a boundary as you can make. Go ahead.
Did they have guns back then?
Yeah, just say it says shot.
Shot.
Yeah.
So
Slingshot to death.
Bow and arrow.
bow and arrow.
Slingshots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, slingshots. Slingshots are also something you would shoot with in ancient times. So yes, they could be shot. And those the compound bows and the slings were deadly when they would go off. So yeah, it's getting serious, isn't it? The serious boundary. And then the last one, I don't know, makes us all chuckle a little bit. No women. What's that about?
Being clean, probably. Being-
Okay, it has to do with the cleanliness. It has to do with the cleanliness, because if you were having intimate relations, you would become ritually unclean. Okay? We'll see more about this later in the books of Moses. Okay, and the laws of purity that are brought in. You'd have to clean up again.
Especially with dirty clothes.
Especially if you had dirty clothes. And so that's why God says, don't do that.
Yeah.
Take a break.
I wonder how many children were born during this time.
Hard to say. Hard to say. Yeah, that would be hard to stop, having a baby, right? If she's having contractions, you can't do much to stop that. how do we consecrate ourselves today? How do we consecrate ourselves as Christian people today?
Baptism.
Baptism comes immediately to mind, that washing of holy baptism,
Communion.
receiving the sacrament,
Prayer,
prayer. How do we start the service upstairs?
Confession.
Confession of sins and absolution. Okay, that's a consecratory act that we're doing. When we gather in God's house, do we dress differently or behave differently than we would in other situations?
yes.
We should.
Should.
Okay. So the washing of the clothes maybe makes us think of those things. Do you act differently when you're in the church building as opposed to when you're away from the church?
I'd say most people do.
Most people do. Most people do. Yeah, there's a sense of boundaries and holiness that goes along with it. I can remember as a kid, I went down to visit my friend Andy, and we were in front of the Catholic Church, and I said something I shouldn't say, and Andy punched me in the shoulder. He said, "You shouldn't do that here." And I was like, "Well, you shouldn't hit me." But there was a sense, he had a sense that that was inappropriate at that place. Okay? There's some things that shouldn't be said no matter where you are, right? Those boundaries. But you have to begin, if you're teaching people a sense of right and wrong, you have to have things like boundaries in place. There have to be rules. And so God starts out in this simple way with 3 rules: washing, set a boundary, and leave the ladies alone for a few days, okay? Give them a break. Any comments or questions about that consecration? All right. Verses 16 to 20. Verses 16 to 20. Now we're going to be hearing about how God manifests His presence. Earlier he said, look with me at verse... Let's see, verse 14, so Moses, no, excuse me, that's not it. Anyway, God says He's going to show up at the mountain, and He's going to veil His presence there with a cloud. Now let's see how all of this unfolds. Verses 16 to 20. How does it all unfold?
You want somebody to read?
Yeah.
Oh. And it came to pass on the 3rd day of the morning, there was thunder and lightning, and the thick clouds upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the neither part of the mount. And the Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended unto it in fire, and the smoke therefore ascended, and the smoke of the furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed loud and louder, Moses spat, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain. The Lord called Moses up to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up.
Thank you, Jim. What are the signs of God's presence as He comes to the mountain?
Thunder.
Thunder?
Lightning.
Clouds.
Clouds. What kind of clouds?
Thick.
Thick clouds, dark clouds.
Trumpet. Trumpet.
The sound of a trumpet. Whoops. Anything else happens? Shows that God is present. Look at verse 18.
The earthquake.
The trembling of the earth. Yeah. If you were out in the woods and you saw thick, dark clouds and you heard thunder and saw lightning and the earth was trembling from the sound, what would you think was happening?
Earthquake,
The end?
earthquake, maybe?
Like maybe an earthquake?
I'd be saying heading for cover.
Head for cover?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a storm coming in, isn't it? It's like a violent, violent storm coming in when God's presence comes down to Sinai.
Yeah,
Also, they had to be shaken up because it said he descended down in fire.
Okay?
And that'd be kind of scary because they'll get burned up, you know?
Yeah. Now, we know God doesn't have to manifest His presence this way, don't we? There's a story later on in the Scriptures where the Lord appears to Elijah and He speaks to him in a still small voice, like a whisper. And that's how God manifests His presence there. What's God up to? Why all of this? What's He
Their
doing?
attention.
He's getting their attention.
Plus he's teaching them obedience.
He's teaching them obedience.
He wants them to know He's there.
Okay,
He makes His presence known.
yeah. All these things, I think, all these things are happening. And He's going to get the people to quiet down and reach that first goal of obey. Listen to the Lord your God with a silent, and focused heart. Yeah, God is making a statement here, right? We talk about that. People make a fashion statement by what they wear and how they come out on a stage or things like that. What do the Buckeyes do when they run out onto the field at the beginning of a game? What's that?
That's the like fireworks on the side.
Oh, there's fireworks going off and all of those kinds of things. God's making an entrance here. God's making an entrance, and one that they can't mistake. It's also a statement of His power and authority, isn't it? Don't mess. Don't mess with me. You're going to see in chapter 20 what follows. Take a peek forward to chapter 20. What's going to follow this statement of God? The 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments of God. He's going to give to Moses on Mount Sinai. So God is trying to bring some gravity to the situation and get Israel focused on obey my voice, keep my promises, my covenant. And we're on the doorstep of God giving His covenant to Israel. The first expression of the covenant we're going to see in chapters 20 to 24. And then throughout the books of Moses, they revisit this and they renew the covenant, and Moses is constantly writing them a new law. As problems and issues come up, he gives them new guidance and new laws as they go forward. Just like we do with our laws, right? We didn't stop at the Constitution and Bill of Rights. It keeps expanding, doesn't it? It keeps expanding as the needs and issues arise. And the same thing happens with the people of Israel. Any comments or questions?
Plus, I feel that God is making a statement here because you don't know how long this took to do all this. It does not say how long He came to this part of the thing. And these people were probably very impatient. And maybe He's teaching them, finally teaching them to be patient, and He's going to take over.
Yeah, there's a test of their patience coming. I won't comment on it yet, but there's a serious test of their patience coming, and in turn, they're going to test God's patience. That's going to be following very, very, very shortly. Let's see. Awesome, overwhelming experiences. Have you ever had an awesome, overwhelming experience like that Israel experienced on that day? Have you ever seen anything quite that overwhelming? I see heads shaking no. Anybody here at the invasion of Normandy? That would have been an awesome, overwhelming experience.
How would you think we are?
It's just an illustration, Jim. You don't have to take it personally. Yeah.
Wasn't that D-Day? They flew over Normandy or something?
Yes, the invasion of Normandy is D-Day.
That's, my son, when he was in the airborne service, they reenacted that. I
Oh,
thought that would be awesome.
what that would be like. Yeah, get a little taste of it.
Yeah.
Get a little taste of it. Yeah. Yeah, probably apart from storms, huge storms, powerful storms, and things like a war, there's probably not too many entrances like this. Is there? Maybe if you had been in out in San Francisco when a big earthquake happened or something like that, it was that kind of an experience for the people. There's shake them to their core. And God is getting a point across about who He is and about their relationship as He's about to give them these 10 commandments. Let's read the last verses in the chapter then, verses 21 through 25. Verses 21 to 25. We'll close out the chapter.
And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look and many of them perish. Also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them." And Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, 'Set limits around the mountain and consecrate it.' And the Lord said to him, 'Go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them.' So Moses went down to the people and told them."
So how are the people responding here at first, or what's the Lord concerned about their response? How are they responding when this happens?
They'll be so excited they'll rush toward the mountain.
Okay, there's a curiosity, isn't there? This is piquing their curiosity. Maybe not all of them would have responded this way, but some of them surely are. Any storm chasers out here?
I'd like to.
You'd like to? Yeah, I've got someone in my family who likes to watch storms.
Yeah.
Someone who saw a tornado when she was a little girl, and found that fascinating. And you're supposed to don't get out there and take a picture, right? You're supposed to head for cover.
Her and I can go storm chasing.
You can go storm chasing. Yeah, you get a van with a thing that goes around on the top, and you can go chase storms. So God's warning the people about those boundaries again. He's reminding them of those boundaries. It's an exciting moment as God brings forward His law, His 10 commandments to them. Moses has to go down the mountain, though, to drag somebody up. Who's he dragging up? Aaron. Aaron, his brother, has to go up there on the mountain. Can you imagine going up into that dense cloud full of lightning to talk with God? What an experience. Go ahead.
Maybe I just missed it. I thought there were no priests.
Yeah, there's references to priests here, aren't there?
Yes, there is.
But
So-
now they're saying priests.
So maybe the word has already been given. I'd have to go back and check to see that it's the sons of Aaron who are going to become the priests. We know that later. They've not been consecrated for that purpose yet, but perhaps they've been informed. I'd have to go back and check though, Joe. Good eye. I noticed the same thing as we were reading. I thought, wait a minute, that's not what I said a minute ago. Any other comments or questions as we're finishing up here? We're going to save the 10 Commandments for next week.
Do you think that the mountain compared to desert had greenery and stuff to be very inviting for you wanted to?
Today, if you go to Sinai, it's pretty much desert. So you think sandy desert, stony desert. But we know from archaeology and from also historical references that at that time, the wilderness was more lush. There would have been pasture for the cattle that they had brought out with them. There would have been those kinds of opportunities for them. The archaeologists know this because when they dig, they go through the dirt that they dig out, and then they look for pollen. And they can find the pollen of all these different plants that were in that part of the world at that time. And that's how they can tell those things in their archaeology. So it probably was not at all like it looks today. It would have been more like a drier pasture ground, I would think. Yeah.
Kathy and I seen a documentary last week on this, based on this on Exodus.
Yeah.
And they're saying they're not too sure where Mount Sinai was.
Okay. Yeah, the traditional location is where St. Catherine's Monastery is. It's down there in those, they're kind of a red granite mountains.
They think that's it, but they're really not too sure.
Yes. So yeah, the archaeologists are going to have different opinions about where all of that stuff is. We're going to go for our purposes with the traditional location because that's what keeps it simpler for us. Any other comments or questions here? God's about to give His law. The Exodus is a message of the gospel to God's people. He's delivering them. It's a deliverance from evil, like we say in the Lord's Prayer. So first He rescues the people, and now He's going to lay down His law for them. Here's how we should live going forward. So there's very much a law-gospel dynamic taking place here in the story of the Exodus. Let's bow our heads and have a closing prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank You for consecrating our lives through the gifts and blessings we received in Holy Baptism. And help us, O Lord, return to those blessings each time we have that confession and absolution in our lives, each time we go to the sacrament of Your body and blood. Lord, teach us to be a holy nation, a holy people, consecrated to Your purposes and ready and willing to obey Your voice. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All righty, thank you folks.